Okay, so hopefully we're live on Facebook now, and I know that we've got our amazing guys, technical team at Media City, who are also broadcasting us live from YouTube. So I'm just giving a bit of a thumbs up to the people in the box to say hopefully we're all good.
Thanks Jack, thanks Ian, thanks John.
And thanks Jan for suggesting that we have these kind of meetups. So this is the first of a series, we're hoping, and
yes,
I'm yes, exactly. So Andy, do you want to introduce
yourself? Yes, my name is Andy Miah, and I'm Chair of Science Communication and Future Media at the University of Salford, and we're here in the Digital Performance Lab, which is a place that we've used many times for all sorts of installations, bringing art, science, technology, media together, and it's just so full of kit. I think we've got 4 cameras on us at the moment, and yeah, it's a bit like a little bit like life forms in front of us, so it's kind of strange, but it's a good place to do things like this and try some new stuff out. And the team here is always really excited to experiment with new things. That's why it's always great to come back here.
Yep. And I'm Erinma. I'm a lecturer here at Salford University in Science, Communication, Future Media. What I love about this room is every time we come in, it's new and it changes. And I think I'm in a different room every time I come in, so that's quite exciting. So we were going to chat for about 20 minutes about what we're trying to do here at Salford, and having science communication and future media at the heart of what we do as an organisation, and how we get the public involved in some of the research that we're doing. So maybe just kick us off with that.
Yeah, so I've been here 3 years nearly now, 3 years in October, and when I arrived at Salford it was clear there was already quite a lot of energy to do science communication work. People like Trevor Cox were around that have been doing things for quite a few years, and actually the relationship with Manchester Science Festival, which is a big relationship for us, goes back, I think, nearly to the beginning of the festival 10 years ago. And you can find kind of archives of videos of stuff that's happened actually here at Media City from way back when. And so there's been a kind of long-term route into this, but over the last 3 or 4 years, it's become more formalised through appointments of people, funding for specific science communication activities. And now we have this new master's degree which will launch in September this year.
Yep, so we're quite excited about that.
Very excited, yeah. It's been a slog to get it through, but it's been exciting to develop it and think about, well, as we try to do, I think constantly here, is think about what science communication needs today, how we can do it differently, how we can improve on what people have done before, but also see how it can interface with other aspirations and objectives around both universities and outside of them. And that's a big part of the thought process behind that degree, certainly.
So we both use digital as part of our practice. So I've been doing stuff around working with games, museum science industry, and you've been using digital and working with artists. So this idea about having a degree, a master's, that is inviting digital as part of student science communication, was that something that you kind of had as an original idea?
Well, I guess the origin is my appointment 3 years ago, which started off as a appointment in science communication, but we focused on digital. And since being here, it was apparent in places like this that there's a lot of advanced thought on how to do digital differently. So a lot of the focus on future media comes out of recognising that here at Salford there's a long tradition of innovating with the media. So we don't need to just kind of think about where we are now, we can think about where we're going next, and hopefully inspire people to be creative in their use of digital to try to break new boundaries, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited about. That's what attracted me, I would say.
Yeah.
One of the challenges with science communication is, and with digital, I think, is how to make it inclusive. And so those are the kinds of things that I'm really keen that we're thinking about and that we're building into the course. But I think there are great possibilities to do that. One of the things that I'm also excited about that we've got coming up is you've been building over the last, 3 or 4 years, connections and partnerships with Manchester Science Festival, with Home in the city, and with other connections, FACT in Liverpool, myself with Sheffield Doc Fest. So we've got all these amazing partnerships that we've been kind of working on, and we're hoping to bring that to bear into the course. So one of the exciting things, I think, is that having the science communication science jam at Media City in October, and we're inviting people to come in and get involved. What kind of things are we going to see happening?
I mean, it's such a highlight of the year, and one of the reasons why it's so great to work with Manchester Science Festival is it becomes this place where we can just sort of mobilise a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm around the university to do something different. So this year, again, we have a big weekend, which is the opening weekend of the festival over at Media City, where we will have our game lab, which is kind of broadly speaking, the theme is to bring gaming into all kind of science and technology experiences. A big part of what we'll do within that will be using virtual reality. And this again links to Salford's wider history in using that sort of technology. There's a long history of VR development here, and hopefully this weekend will be a good way to consolidate that as an identity for the university. And so we're talking to all kinds of people. We're working with VR Manchester, which is a great meetup group in the region, and we're also going to hopefully link with VR Girls UK and get them to come along and have a meeting here as well. So over a 2-day period, we'll have umpteen versions of VR around the place, people experimenting with stuff, thinking about collaboration across industry and research. We'll have some elements that relate to physical activity, so we're going to kind of create an augmented reality gym. I was speaking to one guy a couple days ago about augmented reality wallpaper, which so many things that kind of keep popping up in this world. It's just so exciting to be around people developing here. So we thought VR would be a good focus, but actually also every year we should just do a VR meetup, because this has changed so quickly. I think last year technology was so far from what it is this year. So bringing that innovation into the experiences that we have around the festival is a big part of what I think we need to do. And if you think about this space here as well, Media City, the place Media City, where you have all this innovation in media technology, it makes sense that we think about that relationship between science, technology, and the media. So hopefully it'll be a place where people can come along and try out lots of different things. We might also have board games, so hopefully there'll be something for everybody.
Fantastic. I'm invited Catherine Allen, who said yes.
Great.
She runs, as well as being a kind of VR creative, she's also into and running schemes around diversity and inclusion in VR. So that's a really good and positive thing to have her here.
Because what sort of the best examples you've seen in that in the last year or two? You see pretty good stuff?
I've started to see, for example, that BBC have started to look at subtitling in virtual reality. One of the things I'm really interested in, because often, if you're a deaf person or you have English as a foreign language or second language, actually having subtitles would be a way forward for those two groups of people. The challenge, of course, with subtitling VR pieces is it's not the same as if you were just to subtitle an ordinary 2-dimensional video. And so to be thinking about kind of where your head is positioned as you move through and look at content, it's really great that that a public sector organisation is thinking about those things, and that VR creators can then start using those tools to embed it into their VR experiences. I know that there was this great one VR piece that I saw at Sheffield DocFest, Notes on Blindness. So it's a film and it's also a VR piece. And although it's focused around a character whose story, their journey is that they go blind, they thought really hardly about audio description and thinking about how they subtitle it in the future to make it even more accessible. So kind of building accessibility in at the outset. And then I've been really excited to follow what Unlimited, who are this organisation, they were set up as part of the legacy of the London 2012 Olympics. And they do incredible things with disabled artists who are leading on the use of technology, and they build inclusion in as part of what they do. And so I've been really excited to see that there are these organisations who are kind of innovating, but also standardising that technology should be accessible to everybody. I think there's even I think there's a VR or a disability hackathon that's coming up in September that's being run by Barclays. So people are starting to kind of get on board that it's important that we make things accessible for everyone. So, and that's of course something that we want to have in the heart of our course, and training up our students to think about these things.
I was thinking about that module we have that's on global challenges in science communication, where we try to engage people with some of the really big issues of our day, and certainly inclusion and accessibility is central, especially to so many media experiences. But I think that should be quite a fun module.
And thinking about privacy and the ethics of it, fake news. So we've got this fake news piece that we're going to do, which I'm quite excited about.
Me too. It's something. It feels like it could be a useful thing. So we call it the Library of Fake News. So I'm really proud about the fact we've got the library involved with our Manchester Science Festival programme. And they did it last year. They had a station up at Victoria Station for a week last year, and this year it's going to be the Library of Fake News, which for me is important because in this world of distributed and too much information, the challenge I think for people is often is about authority and about legitimacy of news and how you find sort of trustworthy gatekeepers of news. And people don't trust the media, they don't trust new media, they don't trust social media. And I was involved with a Scottish Government inquiry a couple of years ago where we thought about what is the role of libraries in the 21st century. And I know certainly in my own local public library, it's not a very busy place.
Oh, really?
And yet, you know, these things
I
could
love
be
the
helped.
library.
Yeah, but it's not terribly well populated.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to rethink the role of libraries in our age to kind of help us cut through some of the noise that's out there, but also to help us even think about, well, how do you archive fake news? What is fake news as a historical artifact, you know?
Let's look back at the lies.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, we need to kind of capture all these
It's
things.
a difficult balance, I think, between, so we have this idea of using storytelling to enable the communication of science. And then there's this challenge with fake news. So even when we were kind of setting up the course, thinking about the ethics around storytelling and science, there's a kind of almost like a big barrier around scientists wanting to use storytelling because of that possibility of it verring on fiction.
Yeah.
Whereas I think there's this really interesting opportunity around blurring fact and fiction, that you have a way in to capture the public and imagination, because people will have their beliefs and the people that they know and the people that they trust. So there's something about trust, I think, and how do we encourage and enable that trust is built with scientists and scientific institutions.
Yeah, and that's where it's interesting to work with artists and designers. I often talk about examples of where artists or designers have attempted to put out into the public domain something that is incredibly provocative, inevitably controversial, but borderline truth, fake kind of thing. So one example I talk about is a program called The Great Donor Show from 2007. So this was a show in the Netherlands, and it was a game show. And the 3 contestants on the show needed a kidney. There was 1 donor, and the audience had to decide who gets the kidney.
Oh, wow.
So this went global, of course. Everyone appalled by this whole idea. You know, reality TV gone mad. And anyway, it got covered all over the world. And then during the broadcast, they went through the whole show, told the life stories of the 3 people. The audience did get to vote. They had a phone-in vote as well. And the moment when they decided or revealed who had won, the lights went up on the studio. The presenter turned to the camera and explained that there's a big organ shortage in the Netherlands. And this program was to shine light on that. Now, no one was going to get an organ during this show. It was a whole hoax. But it succeeded in drawing attention to this issue, which is, you know, where I think artists, designers, filmmakers can be sort of provocative with their means, but where the ethics is really challenging, because on the one hand you can think, yes, this is a massive deception, but they won an Emmy for it the following year. So you think, well, maybe it was a reasonable way of trying to make a big difference to an important topic.
And do people get donations in the end?
No, and of course all the contestants were part of it. They were part of the prank. They were signed up to it because it's just an appalling situation that many countries have on this topic.
I would love to see a researcher get that clear.
I know, it's possible, completely possible.
Totally. So that idea of kind of everyday ethics gets introduced, I think, into that practice. But you just released a paper out into the world. It's open access, so anyone can read it. But what's it about?
So broadly it's about how we can think differently about public engagement with science and the role of science communication in that process. So for a good 30 years now we've been trying to figure out, well, what should be that means by which to create a meaningful, deep, rich relationship with people outside of the university or outside of research. And I suppose what we've tried to do here actually personally I've gone through this over the last 3 years where I've been producing lots and lots of events here, and it's been a useful process to think about, well, what are the things that matter, that I think are really important to do. And often we focus on, okay, let's just have more science festivals, more science engagement events, more science centres, more people through the doors, more bums on seats, and that is the emphasis. But for me, the richest science communication experience I've ever had was at the Tramway Theatre in Glasgow, and it was a performance inspired by Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time. And it was only for 12 people at a time. You went around the sort of different scenes, and it was really profound, really deep, and I'll remember it my whole life, I'm sure. So thinking about what are those routes towards deep experiences, memorable experiences, experiences that aren't just about trying to convey scientific information, but are about trying to help people accumulate what I describe as science capital.
Yeah.
This idea that you are invested into the future of science, and it matters where it goes, and your role in shaping that is important. And I think that's such an important step in getting people to be involved with it, to be supportive of it, to be critical of science, and to ensure that science doesn't kind of go off without society, which is often the case, I think.
There's a big gap, isn't there, between, I think I saw Jon Snow talking about it, and Grenfell Tower and the injustices around that. I think there's a gap between the media and the public, and between scientific institutions and the public. And we acknowledge that gap, I think. But how do we do something about it? So I'm really interested in what is the role of a science communicator in these challenging times where there are these massive divides between rich and poor, between those that have and those that don't. And this idea of science capital, which is meant to be for everybody about creating the future, how we work towards that. So that's something that I'm really interested in. And perhaps the work that I do, which is around citizen science and getting non-scientists involved in actually doing scientific research, is a step towards that. But I've been reading most recently that most of those people that get involved in it, they don't see themselves as citizen scientists,
right?
Which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
So sometimes
What do they see themselves as?
It depends on the context. So sometimes people see themselves as helpers or volunteers or amateur, something amateur. It's a hobby, rather than I'm a citizen scientist. So what we name things can often have a negative impact on how people perceive it themselves, which I think is quite interesting. And of course, academics, we like to name and define things. So we're going to have this citizen science showcase as well as part of this Media City Jam. So we're organising that at the moment. Yeah. We've got pulsar hunters coming along. I think we've got the air that I breathe, which is all about monitoring air pollution. What else we've got? We've got some bio selfies, which is looking at our microbiology. We've got some stuff coming from the Natural History Museum down in London. So looking at fossils, which would be a really good way not to just have a go at doing some science, but also have a chance that those different practitioners can connect and share learning with one another. So I'm quite excited about that.
This is where it sort of links with what's happening in digital culture, really. The idea that we're not kind of happy just sort of being consumers of stuff, of news, of information, of the media, and we want to be part of it, we want to have a role. And the citizen science, I think, responds to that desire to be more central to something's development rather than to be respondent to it. It's kind of, it's being kind of prosumer is the word that's often used in digital lingo. But it's interesting to hear that this notion of the citizen science may be just a figment of the scientist's imagination.
Armies, people are doing it for other reasons.
Yeah.
So I think that social side, and even there's some citizen science projects where you might be going for a walk and counting butterflies or something like that, or counting birds. And so just that thing about having that social element as well as being in nature, some of those things was valued as much as doing the science. So the actual process of doing the research is as important as the research itself. So I guess it's how we start thinking about that mutual benefit to both doing the research and involving people and what the public actually bring.
It's funny because I also think that there's the opposite thing going on for many scientists. They kind of want to get out of the lab into the real world.
We're trying to escape.
Well, I think about our colleagues like Joe, Sarah, and who went to Ian, who went to the Latitude Festival a month or so back, and they're out there with their kind of shack and their DNA testing kit, and somehow there's something about being outside of the formal laboratory setting that I think just changes us as people. I remember doing a European Parliament thing a few years ago, and the debate or the project was about life in 2045, and I looked around this big room in Brussels. I thought, no one's going to be here in 2045. It just felt like the children are missing.
Yeah.
And in so many of these conversations, you kind of need to really broaden your range of stakeholders and people that are feeding into the conversation to actually come to terms with what's important, which I think is partly why science festivals are so appealing, because it does seem to expand that demographic around your work. And certainly the scientists that we have here, I think people like Chloe, Gemma, and they, there is a sort of desire to sort of meet the public and be part of that world rather than just be in the lab.
Yeah. I was thinking about memorable experiences and kind of picking up on what you spoke about. So over the summer, I was at a part of Manchester International Festival.
Yeah,
I was attached to Yale Bartana's. She's a visual artist, and her production was called "What If Women Ruled the World?" And this was a concept, an idea to try and think about what alternative structures might there be from what exists already that would change the way we do things today in society and kind of make the world a bit more equitable and get away from the massive challenges we have, especially in the era that we have with kind of Brexit and what's happening in America. But what was really exciting about that was, again, it was using performance as a way into it, but also thinking about an experience that people come to underground. And part of it, the setup was initially fictional, and then you have these female experts, women that come on stage, and they're asked the challenge, what is the biggest threat to humanity? And then those experts have this conversation as if it was one of those, well, it could have been the UN, or it could have been the European Union, it could have been one of those tables where just policy and decisions are made. But there was something interesting about that again, they've kind of opened up this world where the audience is witnessing something that's not real and real at the same time. You came to see it, so I'm interested to think about your sort of response to it.
Yeah, I mean, I was blown away by it, really, especially that relationship between the sort of unscripted element of the experts coming in and talking, but also how the actors within the show are responding to some of those things. It seemed to me a wonderful example of how one of the problems we have with expertise is that it's often located within a very similar format. It's a television program, it's a newspaper. The structures of those entities, a TV show or newspaper, are pretty fixed. The expectation for what needs to happen within an article or within a program, within the news at 10, whatever it might be, are quite restrictive in terms of the kind of conversation you might have. So bringing it into this sort of setting, for me, allowed people to rethink their ideas about expertise, or even what we should expect from experts in terms of certainty. I mean, I think one of the frustrations scientists often have with communicating with the media is acknowledging that uncertainty is within our conclusions, and yet there is such a demand on, yes, what is the fact of the matter? What is it we should do? What is the evidence to support this? Is it completely clear? And often it isn't. So I felt that within that, I guess, an hour and a half performance, more or less.
Actually, it changed every night.
Oh, did it?
So what was really interesting, and this is what was so brilliant about the craft, I think, of performance, was seeing that if certain cues were missed or something happened, that could throw out the timing, and it would go longer or it would go shorter.
Right.
So I noticed how the timing.
Yeah.
So what I loved about this show and the concept from the artist was thinking that every night would be a different show because it would be a different set of people and different conversations, and even we wouldn't know what was going to come out of it. But they had to come up with a kind of conclusion at the end, and their kind of actions or their key points about how they would change the world if women ruled it. And so that was really interesting, that every show literally was different every night. You could have been, so if you talked to someone who went to the night before, they would have seen a completely different show. And so that was fascinating about it, but I learned so much about cultural leadership, so the leadership of the cast, the crew, Vicky Featherstone, who was the director and the writer, and actually the structures that they use in crafting that world and crafting the space in which fiction and reality play out was absolutely incredible to kind of bring into how you think about how you create the future in the moment. But they've created structures that support that. So I learned there's a lot that I think that we can learn from other disciplines. So whether that's performance or that's art, or of course our technicians here at Media City who've been working hard to keep us live. But I think we should perhaps have one final thought and then close and say why, and say that we're going to have more of these.
We are.
We're testing. We're testing it out on mobile.
We are.
We're testing it out on YouTube. Jack is somewhere switching between cameras. But so this is the first of many. Hopefully.
It is. And I guess for me, the main thing for the program is about those kind of creative approaches to science communication that we kind of have found a passion for, and inspiring that into the students that we work with. And it feels like we have a really good network of people, not just internally, but externally around us that want to work with our students, that want to give them technology that they can play with and see what can be done with it. And I think that sort of playground feel is a central part of what we try to do here. Really think quite broadly about possibilities, recognise people have different roles and entry points into producing events. You know, they might be presenters, they might be writers, they might be producers of things. And I think that's another sort of sensibility that we bring into this. That you can pick and choose your way through our master degree to suit both your aspirations, your skills, but also some things you might want to hone a bit as well and develop. And that flexibility is at the heart of the course. It's online and part-time only, in order to ensure that people that have busy professional lives, we know lots of freelancers that are off around the world on contract doing things in science communication, and we kind of want to make sure that this course accommodates that person. You can be in Malawi doing a science festival and still be taking the course. So that flexibility is really at the heart of I think what we're doing, and hopefully it will give rise to a kind of long-term community of people that have shared something similar and have a similar idea about how to think creatively about science communication.
I'm excited to see what the students surprise us with. So anything that we've imagined, imagine that 5 times over, and we've never even thought about it. So I'm excited about people surprising us with their creativity and building their portfolios and their career with us, which is exciting.
It is exciting.
So that starts 3rd week in September.
It does,
I think there's still opportunities for places if people are interested.
There is.
We do have a really interesting cohort that we're excited to launch into the universe and hear more from. But I think probably that's enough for now. Great to be out on the internet and chatting to people about what we're doing.
All right, thank you.
Cool.